I don't pop my cork for every man I see.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a new episode of Chatting with Lady C. Hello Mum, how are you?
I'm actually in a lot of pain, honey, but putting that aside, I'm well, thank you very much.
Yes, it's still the arm, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it's...
But it will get better.
One is ever hopeful.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will. Everything passes, both good and bad.
It has to get to its worst to get better, doesn't it, sometimes?
But you're well?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Good.
All right, so we're going to start off today's questions. So for our first question is from Alina George. Just heard about baby number 2 for Meghan and Harry. Can't wait for your commentary.
Oh, well, I mean, I think the whole thing is fascinating. In fact, I think it is intriguing in both the actual and the metaphorical meaning of the word. Because if you remember, Meghan had a miscarriage in July. And I have been told that the baby is due in June, which means that Meghan is extraordinarily fertile. You know, she gets married, a few weeks later she's pregnant, she gets pregnant, she loses the baby, a few weeks later she's pregnant again. Because of course the dates do stack up and she certainly looks about 5 months pregnant. Nobody who is 3 months or even 4 months pregnant is that large. I mean, not even Meghan Markle. And I mean, the bump is absolutely huge. I think if indeed she is pregnant, wonderful, great news for them. I'm very happy for them. It's always lovely when people want to have children and they have children. I think one cannot begrudge anybody the joy of having a child that they want. I also think that the announcement was timed clearly, very deliberately to maximize. You know, this is a private couple who have left public duties so that Meghan wouldn't be a civil servant in a tiara, to make their way in the world financially while having a private life. And the public is ravished 2, 3, 4 times a week with news from them. Have you ever seen a private couple before that so bombards the public?
No. No, we've gone through it before, every week there's something new. Yes. And this week it's double.
This week it's more than double. It's more than double. True, because, I mean, first of all, the timing is Meghan is very intent on jumping into Diana's shoes. And this is part of her power over Harry. This is also a very good merchandising technique. And she, as I say in my book, she instructed her people that she wanted to be bigger than Diana. And she looks as if she's certainly getting more column inches than Diana. Diana did an awful lot to get column inches because Diana also liked publicity. Well, the announcement coincided with Valentine's Day, which of course is a day for lovers. And as the whole world knows, that Meghan and Harry are the greatest lovers of the 21st century, right up there with Romeo and Juliet, Abelard and Eloise, you name it, she's right up there, and with Harry, with all of them. I mean, the vanity, the egotism, the self-regard, the self-promotion is so flagrant. I mean, it's obscene, you know. But I suppose this is a couple who have links to a royal family merging it. Some people would say prostituting their position and themselves. Cynically and calculatedly to get the absolute maximum amount of attention. Of course, they have got it. And what's ironic is they want privacy. They demand that they be kept private. Then they do something like this, and they know it's going to make every single newspaper, all the newspapers that they don't want writing about them, they want writing about them when they are in control of the narrative. I mean, I have never in my life seen a more flagrant case of abuse of position, abuse of privilege, abuse of the press and of the rights of the press to fairly comment and report, and then the flagrant manipulation of the press and the public and everybody's heartstrings, you know. Oh, there they are, just an ordinary, everyday, royal couple, posing beautifully. I mean, the whole thing is so contrived. You know, it's actually sick-making. You know, whatever happened to dignity? But I suppose when you're prostituting a position, dignity goes out of the window. And what has come in? It's been replaced by glamour. It is a type of glamour. It's a type of evisceration, really, of anything dignified. But it's very effective. And I have said all along, it does not behoove Meghan's critics to underestimate her abilities, because she is very able. So that's my take on it. Oh, I suppose I should say as well, of course, the fact that Eugenie gave birth 5 days before Meghan's announcement was obviously a wonderful poke in the eye for Eugenie, because, I mean, how dare Eugenie wear her tiara? And how dare Eugenie get married when she's going to announce that she's pregnant and looks 3 months pregnant when, according to the figures, she was just barely pregnant, if at all. I mean, you know, the whole thing is really unsavory.
And I've always heard that, shouldn't you announce the baby like 3-4 months when you're sure?
Oh, well, they're sure. You obviously haven't seen the picture.
I've seen everything.
You've seen the picture?
Somebody asked me if she had dreadlocks. I was like, no. It looked like a clump of hair, but it's not.
Well, it might have been extensions.
Yeah, true, actually.
You know,
that's actually a good
It might
point.
have been extensions.
All
because
these fake
Meghan,
stuff that women put on nowadays.
yeah, well, I don't. But I mean, Meghan is one of those girls who when you look at her, you sort of think, oh, there goes the hair of 1,000 Turkish virgins. So she's definitely pregnant, according to the picture.
Where I was trying to get to is, like, you wait the 3 months and then you tell, but she could have waited maybe a week longer to give Eugenie her little...
A bit of a break, so she wouldn't rain on Eugenie's parade. Very good point.
You see?
Yeah.
She could have waited a week.
Yes.
If she's pregnant now, so
Yes.
she could have waited that little longer and let Eugenie everybody be pleased for her.
Yes, well, I mean, why would she do that? I mean, why should Eugenie get any attention? I mean, how dare Eugenie actually get attention? You know, I mean, who does Eugenie think she is getting attention? I mean, Meghan's the only person who deserves attention. And, you know, why should Eugenie get any attention? I mean, who is Eugenie? I mean, just a born princess. I mean, it's like that wretched old woman, the Queen. I mean, who does she think she is? I mean, you know, these people need to know their place, and it's under her foot. Oh dear, the whole thing is beyond a farce. It's actually sick-making. If a baby is born of a surrogate in America, where it is legitimate, would that baby be legitimate in England? That's a grey area and a very interesting question to ask. And I have to say, I have not had the time to investigate it. But it is a very interesting question to ask. And I'm not quite sure I know the answer, because the baby would certainly be legitimate in America. Not, of course, that I am for a moment implying that Meghan would be having a baby by a surrogate. I mean, you only need to look at that huge bump to see that she is obviously pregnant. And there is therefore no suggestion whatsoever emanating from me that that baby would be born by a surrogate. I hope I make that very clear. And on that note, honey, would you like to ask the second question?
No worries. So for our next question today is from Clara Saltmarsh. Lady C, I am devastated to hear of Meghan's victory in being granted a summary judgment on privacy and copyright, and think that a full and fair trial will never happen now. Question: has Justice Warby read Finding of Freedom yet? I doubt it, but it would have given him a wonderful insight into how the Sussexes want full control of their own narrative, regardless of how many lies they tell in the process. This so-called private letter was fully intended for public consumption, to present them in a favourable light, and was politely toned down by Mr. Knop and other palace courtiers. I am so disappointed by the self-serving judiciary. Does this now mean we will never be allowed to hear the real truth about Archie's birth, and Meghan will become known as the martyr who silenced the malevolent media? I would welcome your sage comments.
Well, I think, wow, that is to the point. I do not entirely know that the judiciary is self-serving. The judiciary is supposed to serve justice, and they are supposed to serve justice by implementing the laws. And in this country, the laws come about in two ways. The first way is by statute, that is Parliament, etc. And the second way is by legal precedent. I know that associated newspapers are very seriously considering appealing. The difficulty, of course, is that he's no longer Mr. Justice Warby. He's now Lord Justice Warby, because he has been promoted into the Court of Appeal. For many years now, there has been an agenda within the judiciary to introduce privacy laws through the back door, and to effectively make Britain have the system that France does, where it is virtually impossible to scrutinize a public figure in the public press. David Eadie, who at one stage in the 70s was my barrister and who became the senior defamation judge, which Warby has just ceased being, also had a tendency in that direction. And it would appear that Warby also has a tendency in that direction. I personally am very disappointed. I know as a fact that the palace is up in arms about the judgment because they were itching for the four courtiers to give evidence which would have unmasked Meghan. But I don't think the public actually understand to what extent judges can be really very naive. They function in ivory towers. They think they are very exposed to the fullness of life, but they really are only partially exposed to a certain dimension of life. I would find it very difficult to believe that Mr. Justice Warby, as he then was, and he incidentally did read, he stated that he read Funding Freedom and Finding Freebies from cover to cover. And I will therefore say that having read it, he should have agreed with this lady, but he has not. He has taken the view that Meghan wrote that letter, obviously with help from the palace, so therefore there had to be some contemplation that it would be public at some point. He has taken the view that an ordinary person writing a letter to his or her father would expect that that letter be kept private. Well, this is, with due respect, a completely fallacious point of view. First of all, Meghan is not an ordinary person. She is a member of the royal family. Her correspondence should form a part of the royal archives, which becomes public at some point. Secondly, this letter was clearly written with a contemplation that it would surface publicly, which means that Meghan wrote it hoping that she would have pressed enough of her father's buttons that he would be so outraged by the content of the letter that he would reveal it to the public, which he didn't. She is the one who revealed it to the public first, through her friends. And I find his judgment mystifying, because he is effectively saying, which is basically illogical, that anybody who writes a letter that they claim is private, even though they know it's likely to surface publicly, and they have written it taking advice so that when it surfaces publicly, that it will do them good and do the person to whom they're writing the letter harm, that is still private, and that they can leak the contents of that letter, but the victim of their missive, the target of their missive, and let's make no mistake about it, poor Thomas Markle was the target of Meghan's malevolence and malign mischief-making. She wrote that letter to wound her father in every way possible. And If she says she didn't, I would recommend that she look up what the word decency and what the word truth mean in a dictionary. I think his judgment is it advances the cause by making it a judgment. It then goes towards precedent, which means that other people can sue, saying that the contents of their letters are private when they were clearly meant to be public. And the victims of their malevolence have no recourse. Because let's remember, it wasn't enough that Meghan wrote that letter. She got her friends to leak it to People magazine and to make her out to be a victim. And Warby, in his naivety, and he's got to be naive, and in his woolly thinking, and in his completely untenable reasoning, has decided that she is entitled to privacy. He also declares, which is a fact, that in England, if you have written something, you own the copyright. And to the extent that she penned that note in her own phony baloney affected script that she calls calligraphy and is really nothing but pretentiousness run riot. There's no doubt that she wrote that letter, but there's plenty of doubt that she composed that letter in its entirety, which means that although she owns copyright, she only owns partial copyright. So these are issues to be decided down the line. But I have to say I find the judgment completely perplexing. I know that practically everybody in the legal profession finds the judgment completely perplexing. And contrary to what people might think, the palace do not want that judgment. They did not want that judgment. They wanted Thomas Markle and associated newspapers to have their day in court, so that Meghan could have been exposed for what she truly is. Because Meghan is a very dangerous operator. But you see, it is feasible that Lord Justice Warby, as he now is, shares Meghan's political views. And if he does, he would not want her to have her day in court, because he will want her to have the protection that is afforded to her via the creation of a shield of privacy, where her manipulations, machinations, and calculations can be dexterously and effectively implemented to the detriment of freedom of speech. Because you can't abide by freedom of speech and also believe in censorship. And there is a heck of a difference between an author who writes a letter that they know is calculated to damage their father, and somebody, an ordinary person who writes a letter because they're heartbroken. You know, I mean, he's really, I will finish off by saying I find the whole thing inexplicable in terms of common sense. But then you know, the saying, the law's an arse, and so sometimes are judges. And on that note, next question, honey.
No worries.
What do you think, actually?
I think you're right on this one. I think I don't understand why he didn't show her who she really is, because he's sort of like kept that away and he hasn't like pushed her out. And you don't write a nasty letter to your father and then put it out in public eye. Like, clearly the judge should have seen that's her, that's not him. And like you just said, it's actually her friends that put it out there, probably for her anyway.
But
so it's just a nasty thing, to be honest.
It is nasty.
And he should have seen that. So like what you said, maybe he's more for her, so that's why it's just a letter, maybe he said. It's like, this is all palaver for nothing. Let's just stop it now and just move on.
Yes.
That's probably how he saw it.
Yes. Well, he would have to share her political beliefs. And quite frankly, not only her political beliefs, but he would have to consider her character to be something that it clearly is not. Or excuse it on the grounds that, you know, making an omelette is perfectly okay to break eggs, except, of course, the eggs are people's hearts and skulls. So, next question.
Nice. So for our next question today is from Lovey Moon. Lady C, I notice all is quiet with regards to Meghan's victory against the British publications that, according to the courts, illegally published her private letter to her father. What, if anything, to do you have to say about it?
Well, you know, people need to understand that the media are really, they're governed by laws. They also are governed by self-interest. They are there to report the news. And if the news is, Meg won a great victory! Meg's won a victory against the ghastly newspapers. Oh, she's just annihilated them. Oh, wonderful Meg. Oh, right up there with all the great warriors of history. Oh, gosh, what would society do without Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex? Oh, God forbid that we should ever do without such a wonderful person as Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex. Eco-warrior. Money warrior. Friendship warrior. Warrior for truth, love, decency, censorship. Muzzling everybody who disagrees with her, and all the other wonderful things that she represents. Gosh, aren't we lucky to live in a world where Meghan Markle's posterior is constantly in our face, making all sorts of sounds. But the press are obliged to report the fact that she won. She, of course, has made it into a victory for everybody, and how the press are terrible. Well, I've got news for you. Meghan Markle has had very little damage done to her life by the press. In fact, the press have elevated her from a really rather common and ghastly creature into something that is at least well known. And that is because of the press. They have, wherever possible, tried to, within limits, scrutinize her with a gentleness that she did not deserve, and which the public knows she doesn't deserve. And the public have gone to great lengths to articulate how the press, by and large, are silent about Meghan Markle as what they consider to be a truly atrocious individual with truly atrocious conduct. And this is their belief. And the press have, by and large, not said any of this. We need to remember that. But she has gone after the press and is trying to muzzle the press. And the press understand that some of the judges are very woke and very intent on muzzling the press. So they have to be careful, because if they give Meghan and Harry a dagger with which to stab them, Meghan and Harry will pick up the dagger, and judges, shade of Mr. Justice Warby, will, when the press dodge, will grab the press, make sure the press is standing, and make sure that Harry and Meghan plunge the dagger in. So all of that is going on. It's layers. And the press, but even if the press were not terrified of the consequences, and they are terrified of the consequences, I know, because I have been in constant contact with some of the leading newspapers in this country over certain issues to do with chicanery and birth certificates and all sorts of interesting goings on. And I know that they are all absolutely terrified. And that's why they are silent. And they will be silent until it is safe for them not to be, because the press are basically cowards. And they, like all cowards, will only stand up and have a voice when it is safe to do so, or when the consequences are not going to affect them adversely. Courage requires standing up without the shield and the protection that the press make sure they always hide behind. And that is even more reason why we must not, as a society, have censorship. Because the press are, by and large, pusillanimous little weasels. Oh, they will work you over at the drop of a hat if they think they can get away with it, because they are cheap and vulgar sensationalists, by and large. But it doesn't alter the fact that these cheap and vulgar, cowardly sensationalists are one of the primary blocks between us and perpetual silence and perpetual imprisonment within a society that has little or no freedom. And therefore, it is worth putting up with the nonsense of the press and the cowardliness of the press and all their disgusting antics. And they are disgusting in this country in varying ways, shapes, and forms. Not all of the organs. Some of them are perfectly respectable. Some of them are perfectly fair. Some of them are very decent. Some of them are very trustworthy and reliable. But even the ones that aren't, we need them. It's like an army needs its psychopaths if it is going to win against a monster. And it's as simple as that. Next question, Harry.
Nice.
Did you find that interesting?
Yeah, I agree with you about the press. I mean, it's a strong word, cowards, but like they are a bit scared as well. They are, because like they're scared to probably lose their job or to get really sued and lose the company maybe a lot of money. So I think that's why a lot of people do these, like what we're doing, but they do it on the news, of course. Some people do YouTube videos on the news and they say the truth because they're not, like you say, they're not scared, because you can sue this YouTuber. He's probably got £5 in his account, you know what I mean? So go and sue the...
But also, of course, it's very difficult to shut down everybody on social media,
yes.
which is why Harry and Meghan are now going hell for leather to shut down the social media.
A newspaper company, you're not going to attack the person that wrote the article, you're going to attack the whole big company. So yes, in these sort of big companies, they can lose a lot of money. And also the guy that wrote it could lose his career. And he's next, and we just get a new one because there's a lot of journalists out there. So I think that's why they're not really cowards. I think they're just scared of like losing their position or getting the company in trouble.
They are cowards, believe me. I know they are cowards.
I mean, I'm sorry, because there are some, like in a certain country, I'm not even going to mention the country because I don't want any problems with them. They put a law that you can't write the truth about their own country, and if you do, you can go to prison as a journalist. But they're just getting the information out to their own people. And then there's this really good station that's Russian, and news Russian station that's great, because they basically show what Europe or America would show on the news, and then they show the real video of the Russian news next to the fake one that everybody believes, and then the real one of the Russian news guy shows the real stuff, the behind the scene as well. He's showing what happened in front, but he's also showing it in behind, and there's always two ways. And that's what, and they're, like you say, they're not scared. They're like, come at me. I'm just trying to get the people to know the truth.
Well, that's, of course, what freedom of speech is all about. And that's what...
And I thought that was what America was all about.
Well, but of course...
And she's trying to lock it down.
There is a strong agenda, not only in America, but throughout the Western societies, to effectively censor everybody and deprive them of the right to criticize anything except the powers that be. There's nothing new about this. This is not unique. This has been a conflict that has gone on from the beginning of time. Once you had a few people get together and form a society, this has been a conflict from the beginning of time. Next question, honey.
Okay. So for our final question today is from R.A. Gonzalez Pugliese. Lady Colin Campbell, thank you so much for sharing your comments. I'm confused. If the issue of copyrights has not been determined, how is it possible to pronounce on a privacy issue? If a document is not mine, with what right can I claim privacy over that document? Would you be so kind, please, to help us understand a bit more about these whole entanglements? Thank you, and the best regards.
Love it. I love it. I think this questioner should send that question as an observation to Mr. Justice, now Lord Justice Warby, because, of course, this goes right to the heart of the matter. You don't have the right of privacy over something that isn't yours to have a right of privacy over. So by declaring that Meghan has a right of privacy over that which she did, but he's not determined that which she did, it's all a very grey, woolly area. He is actually saying that Meghan has a right over everything, that which she owns and that which she doesn't own, which of course is absolutely untrue, and it's not good law. It's in fact nonsense. And this is a brilliant point to alight upon. And I would hope that associated newspapers appeal, and I would hope that this is a point that the Court of Appeal alights upon as well, because it is an important point. I mean, we don't know what bits of the letter Meghan wrote, you know, except, you broke my heart into a million pieces, you horrid man, you mean and nasty person, you've just destroyed my whole life, and I'm never going to talk to you ever again.
Seems to have a nice life anyway.
Well, what she's really doing is protecting her life with Harry by making sure that her garrulous father is never unleashed in Harry's presence to blow her cover. That's really what she's protecting, you know, because Daddy with his big mouth is going to be saying things that's going to completely...
Yes, because he's the one that raised her, so he knows her 100%.
But she's now swung it in such a way that Daddy's a horrid, evil person, and you know, Daddy has been corrupted by the press, and Daddy has just ruined her life, and so Daddy. No, H, you can't. No, I've got to protect you and me, and we've got to protect our family against Daddy and the God, and you know, Daddy's been corrupted by the press, and you know, it's actually sick-making, because really what Thomas Markle could have done and should have done, and I hope with hindsight he realizes he should have done it, but I think it's too late for him to do. He should have sued Meghan, her friends, and People magazine for defamation and malicious falsehood. That's what he should have done. But you only have a certain time limit in which to issue proceedings. And I don't know what it is in America, but it would certainly have elapsed in England. And I would imagine that the two things are commensurate. But that's what Thomas Markle should have done. Instead of which, he went about things hoping against hope that he could jerk Meghan to her senses. But Meghan, he doesn't seem to realize, has all her senses about her. The sense of feeling, the sense of touch, Oh, there's some money. Ooh, nice money. Yes, oh yes. Touching a prince, touching the progeny of the prince, touching the sparkling, spanking new life, smelling it, seeing it, feeling it. Oh, Meghan has all her senses about her. Poor Thomas Markle doesn't realise that. He seems to have thought that she would come to her senses without realising that he is the one who raised her in such a way that she would feel entitled, and that she would feel that if you don't give her what she wants, you're a mean and nasty individual and you deserve to be annihilated, or at least never in her precious company. The whole thing is so sick. It's really sick. And on that note, I will say thank you very much. I hope this has been of interest, and do keep the questions coming in.
Thank you, everybody, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you very much, and goodbye.